Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East. Welcome to the news from Abu Dhabi TV. The Israeli occupation army started redeploying its troops around Rafah and its camps, and stated that their military operations in the area are going to continue. The Israeli troops are repositioning themselves at the entrances of the Al Sultan and Brazil neighborhoods in Rafah as an access point to the road of the Salah al-Din Gate and the Yabna camp.
Under
international pressure to end the incursion they started 3 days ago on Rafah city and the Tal al-Sultan neighborhood, the Israeli forces started to redeploy its tanks in the southern Gaza Strip. Israeli sources have stated that this repositioning does not mean that the military operation in Rafah, dubbed the Rainbow, has ended. This is a new Israeli threat that warns of the worst, as if the mass punishment of Rafah and its people was not enough.
I swear to God, the fear and the horror is more than you can imagine. You never know whether the missile is going to hit you or hit someone else. Everybody in this area is a target. It is so very terrifying, so extremely terrifying. And my little brothers are dispersed here and there.
This partial pullout of Rafah city and its camp and neighborhoods has left behind a total of 55 martyrs and about 150 wounded, in addition to the mass destruction it has created. The area looks as if it has been hit by an earthquake of a magnitude of more than 7 degrees on the Richter scale. The houses are demolished, the roads are destroyed, the trees and electricity poles are uprooted or broken. The waterworks network is not running, in addition to the thousands of residents who were made homeless.
21 people of my family used to live in this building. This is our building. We built it ourselves. We built a store and then built our home on top of it. Our blood, our life, everything that we own was in this building. Our tears have gone dry. We can't speak anymore.
This new Rafah invasion and the one preceding it in the Zaytuna neighborhood in Gaza are considered to be the bloodiest and most brutal assaults on the Palestinians since the Gaza Strip was occupied by Israel in 1967. These attacks also coincide with the 56th anniversary of the establishment of the Hebrew state on the land of Palestine, which caused hundreds of thousands of Palestinians to be killed or forced into homelessness. What makes the timing of these attacks even more depressing is that these Palestinians, whose homes are being destroyed, forcing them to live in the open, in schools and tents and on the streets, are the offspring of those Palestinians who have lived through a similar ordeal in 1948.
Israeli occupation troops and tanks redeployed around Rafah refugee camp in the Gaza Strip at dawn on Friday after a massive sweep on the area that left hundreds of Palestinians dead and injured and rendered more than 1,500 Palestinians homeless after demolishing hundreds of homes. Israeli military sources said the tanks are stationed around the camps and neighborhoods, and Palestinian sources said that snipers are located on rooftops.
Israeli occupation forces began a redeployment in Rafah and the southern Gaza Strip at dawn Friday. After a week-long Israeli raid that killed scores of Palestinians, the occupation army pulled out of the Tal al-Sultan neighborhood, where Israeli tank shells and helicopter missiles killed more than 20 Palestinian protesters on Wednesday as they rallied against Israel's aggression on Rafah. Women and children roamed the devastated streets as military tanks patrolled there. These people now live in tents and local schools after all buildings were leveled to the ground.
We are a family of 21 people living in this tent. The building where we used to live was built by the UN, and we added another floor on top of it. We invested all our lives and blood in this house. All of our lives, we worked hard. Our tears have run dry in our eyes. Where will my children sleep? We want a home. We don't want food or milk or flour. We want a house to put our children in.
Israeli military sources said Operation Rainbow launched on Gaza is continuing and that the withdrawal of forces from Tel Sultan was merely a redeployment. Palestinian security officials said Israeli snipers continued to control buildings and attack helicopters were in the sky. Doctors said that relief convoys could not yet enter the camp. A tank and a bulldozer remained at the edge of the neighborhood, blocking all access. In As-Salam and Brazil neighborhoods, a curfew remained in effect.
It's a feeling of fear, more than one can describe. You do not know if the missile will hit you or someone else. Everyone is a target in this area. It's a very, very frightening thing.
On Thursday, occupation forces killed 8 more Palestinians. Among those killed was 37-year-old Khalid Abu Anza, the local head of Hamas armed wing. Dr. Ali Musa, head of Rafah hospital, said he was running out of space to house bodies in the morgue, while 2 ambulances had been put out of action after being hit by Israeli fire. The morgue had the bodies of more than 20 Palestinians who have been killed in a protest. Angry mourners held funerals on Thursday for the martyrs. Around 15,000 took part in the march that called for revenge. Some were unable to bury the dead due to Israel's continuous military strikes. In a separate development on Thursday, the Israeli occupation army killed a Palestinian during an incursion into Qalqilia in the West Bank. Palestinian youths threw stones at Israeli vehicles in the town, leading at least to 1 Palestinian being injured. A 15-year-old Palestinian boy died Thursday from wounds suffered during an Israeli occupation aggression in Zaytun neighborhood in the Gaza Strip on May 11th.
The UN committee statement was issued shortly after U.S. occupation soldiers and the Iraqi police raided the residence of Iraqi Governing Council member Ahmed Chalabi on Thursday. Police seized computers, documents related to the Oil for Food program, a report by the Oil Ministry to the Governing Council, and letters from the Council. Chalabi cut ties with the so-called Coalition Provisional Authority after the raid, adding that the Governing Council would hold emergency talks to discuss a response. He said that he is a friend to America, but when America treats friends in this way, Chalabi added, it will be in trouble.
I am my house, America's best friend in Iraq. If the CPA finds it necessary to direct an armed attack against my home, you can see the state of relations between the CPA and the Iraqi people. Look, I am now calling for policies which would to liberate the Iraqi people, to get full sovereignty now. And I am putting the case in a way which they don't like. I have questioned Brahimi's role, they don't like. I have opened up the investigation of the Oil for Food program, which casts doubt about the integrity of the UN here. They don't like this. So the way to deal with it is to say to the press they are marginalizing me and to finally conduct this thing. This is the penultimate act of failure of the CPA in Iraq.
The head of occupation prisons in Iraq, General Geoffrey Miller, insisted Thursday there is no abuse going on in his detention centers there now. Miller, who testified on the abuses at Abu Ghraib before the Senate Armed Services Committee on Wednesday, told ABC television that a pair of newly released photos showing U.S. soldiers laughing near the body of an Iraqi dead prisoner at Abu Ghraib detention center are inappropriate. But he added, quote, "These are the actions of a very small number of leaders and soldiers." An investigation carried out by ABC News has discovered that a number of former state prison commissioners chosen to set up the Iraqi prison system had been accused of neglect, brutality and death towards prisoners while in charge of U.S. jails. A senior Justice Department official said the department was aware of the background of the men before they were sent to Iraq, but they were among the few willing to go there.
Recent investigations in the U.S. prisoner abuse scandal are showing that the torturing techniques were imported from the U.S. along with the prisoners' directors who were hired to work in Iraq. Lane McCutter was the executive director of the Utah prison system when a mentally ill prisoner was stripped naked and lashed to a chair for 16 hours. The severe punishment was dealt out as he had refused to remove a pillowcase from his head.
By the time he was finally released from that restraint chair, he developed blood clotting through a pulmonary embolism and died.
The abuse was a procedure which McCutter had approved. 2 months later, McCutter resigned to work as a consultant, denying any wrongdoing. But last year, McCutter was hired by the U.S. government to help set up the Iraq prison system. Gary Denland, another former Utah prison director hired by the U.S. government to help set up prisons in Iraq, has been described by the civil rights lawyers as sadistic for denying medical care to inmates. Another member of the team sent to Iraq, John Armstrong, ran the corrections department in a Connecticut prison when the tactics of prison guards were blamed for 3 prisoner deaths. He is now in Iraq as a deputy director of operations, training Iraqis how to run prisons.
He established very, very much like the kinds of things that we are hearing out of Abu Ghraib. They're no strangers with brutality and with degradation and with humiliation, and they're also quite intimate with escaping responsibility for it. He established a culture where that was acceptable conduct, and where if you did it, you wouldn't be punished. You wouldn't be disciplined, and in some cases you would be rewarded.
The backgrounds of these prison directors are now being questioned by Congress and civil rights lawyers. The Bush administration chose a team described by the Attorney General as the best in the field, but Povert said the men are no strangers to questionable prison tactics.
Arab leaders have begun arriving in the Tunisian capital for a summit held at a time the region's 2 main conflicts are at their bloodiest. His Majesty King Abdullah will shortly arrive